Hi there. I am running a couple minutes late, which meant there might not be people joining me today, and that's okay. I'm still going live because I threw people off a little bit. I also have my adorable cat, Minerva, hanging out here with me because she needed some attention today. So I might be acting a little bit awkwardly right now, looking down at my lap. It's because I've got a really cute cat who needed some love. So she's getting some love right now. Sorry if that's kind of awkward, but lots going on today. So this will be a short one. I think today's going to be a shorter story time, but that's okay. It's all good. And this noise, if you can hear the noise, I don't know if you can hear that. Anyway, she's here. She's making her presence known. I appreciate everybody's comments, by the way, from Tuesdays and hanging in there with me because of the noise distraction on Tuesday. Sorry about that. I will, if I need to go to the library again, I will attend to that better next time. And I appreciate people's letting me know and feedback on all of that. And yeah, so here we are. I don't think there are many stories in Exodus for us, but there are a couple things in Exodus chapter 4 that I thought were worth talking about, at least for the sake of just, again, giving a nod to here we go again. But, here's that thing about I'm the God of your ancestors and only naming the men. But also another really couple interesting nuggets in terms of marriage. So, but more this time in terms of, not men taking women and calling that marriage, but just what marriages look like again. So a little bit similar to Abraham having a lot of leeway with what he does and pimping Sarah out a couple times. That kind of thing. How would this go over in your marriage today if your partner treated you like this? That kind of a question. So just a couple nuggets along those lines for us today when we look at chapter 4 of Exodus. And one fun little bit in terms of understanding some of the racism, really interesting pieces in terms of biblical interpretation that has been informed by racist frameworks without being aware that that's what's happening. So it'll make sense when we get to it. If that seems kind of obscure or I'm not very clear about what that is, let me just hang in there with me. So I'm just going to read through. The story time today is Exodus chapter 4, and we have a couple things that relate to my filter and one or two that don't relate, but they're interesting. And while we're here, we'll just mention it briefly. So as I'm reading through the book of Exodus to prepare for these, I'm noticing that most of the content of Exodus falls under this other theme of let's talk about who God is and how God is being depicted here. And let's really be honest about that and how anthropomorphic God is, or how much it's, this is just telling us about the needs of these people, or let's just be really clear about how manipulative God is in this book. I mean, the whole point is that God is meant to be seen as bigger and stronger and better than the gods of Egypt. And one of the ways that God is God is able to manipulate the Pharaoh's heart, and God is able to do all these things. So to me, the book of Exodus falls much better under that topic, which is something I might do after I do this one. So she was about to pull my headphones off. So, okay. So here we go. Let's do Exodus 4. I'm glad to know there aren't any noises. For therapy goes both ways. It does. So thank you. So yes, let's do this. Chapter 4. This is right after God has told Moses that God will bring them to the land, bring up his people out of Egypt to the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, a land flowing with milk and honey. That's in chapter 3. Just wanted to highlight that. over and over again, it is very, very, very clear. Everybody knows there are already people living in the land that God has promised, to these people and their descendants. And it is utterly problematic. It's problematic because if you don't have the tools to critically assess these claims in scripture, then you are likely thinking of them as genuine promises that an actual God has made and will actually follow through on, and is backing up the efforts to follow through on. And that is a very real thing. And I've said this before, but I'll say it again very respectfully. There are plenty of people of Jewish descent, of Jewish identity today, who've just never stopped to think about it. And I've had Jewish students, right, who in my classes, who I say, this is going to be a hard conversation for all of us and for you, and I'm glad you're with us. And I'm curious what you think. And right, very, very intelligent people have said, yeah, I've never stopped to think about how convenient this is, and that we just claim it. We just claim it. I heard it all the time growing up, and so I believe it. And that's because it says it in these scriptures. And right, she and millions of others, right, have been taught to believe it, and it's a part of the air they breathe. And so I think there's something there to be aware of, that these claims in scripture are important. They have been taken as real, as things that were actually promises that were actually made, genuine, honest to goodness promises that somehow will be fulfilled, even though it's 4,000 years later and they're still not fulfilled. There's an element there of commitment and conviction that they will be. And so it's just really hard for me to read some of these scriptures and not point that out, that this is in here. It is problematic. People can see what's going on, as far as like, oh my gosh, it's very clear there are people already living there. But yet we don't talk about that, or the narrative itself finds a way to demonize those people to make it all okay. And people just, that's not where people's attention is. And so all these kinds of things are internalized or naturalized, whatever, right? And so I think it's important to point this out, and to point out how, if you grow up with these promises and claims, you might not stop to consider whether or not those are really rather too convenient, right? And so forth. And is God actually who God is depicted being, and so forth. So, okay, so that's, I'm saying that because that has just been said at least once or twice to Moses before we get to chapter 4. I like to do some sort of context. It's my point here. Okay, and Minerva is still rubbing her sweet little cheeks on things, so we may still have her presence here, but that's what's going on, in case you didn't hear. That's what's going on right now on my lap. I've got a cat who wants some love, and it'll be quieter if I do. But in case you're wondering what's going on, if my behavior seems a little odd. Yeah, so she's with us. All right. So God makes this other promise that when they leave Egypt, they will not leave empty-handed. It's such an interesting claim to make. Another time, another themed story time. So chapter 4, then Moses answered, but suppose they, the Israelite people that he's going to return to, his own people, but suppose they do not believe me or listen to me, but say, the Lord did not appear to you. The Lord said to him, what is that in your hand? Moses said, a staff. And God said, throw it on the ground. So Moses threw the staff on the ground, and it became a snake, and Moses drew back from it. Then the Lord said to Moses, reach out your hand and seize it by the tail. Which is not a very smart way to grab a snake if it's going to bite you. So he reached out his hand and grasped it, and it became a staff in his hand. So that they may believe that the Lord, the God of their ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has appeared to you. So you're to do this in front of them, this miraculous thing, so that they may know that I am the God of all the men in your family, but not of the women. I mean, it's not, that is what it's saying. It's not really what it's saying, right? The God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And wouldn't it be nice if they were saying the God of Abraham and Sarah, Rebecca, Isaac and Rebecca? No, but that's not, we can't expect that of them. And yet, sorry, swimmer's hair. And yet, here we are, the people of monotheistic traditions are the inheritors of thousands of years of thinking about people only by naming them in, right? So again, nothing new, but I'm repeating it because it needs to be repeated, because that's the effect on people, the built up compounded effect of always, 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 always hearing Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? So you have this buildup of effect on you, regardless of your gender, right? So it's important to me to keep pointing it out every time. Not because I don't think you already know, but to point it out again. So again, the Lord said to him, "Put your hand inside your cloak." He put his hand into his cloak, and when he took it out, his hand was leprous, as white as snow. Dun, dun, dun. I'm going to come back to this in just a second. Then God said, "Put your hand back into your cloak." So he put his hand back into his cloak, and when he took it out, it was restored like the rest of his body. If they will not believe you or heed the first sign, they may believe the second sign. If they will not believe even these two signs or heed you, you shall take some water from the Nile and pour it on the dry ground, and the water that you shall take from the Nile will become blood on the dry ground. That's the, I will do these magical things for you to verify that I have sent you. Okay, I need to pause and go back to Moses' hand is turned white as snow, and point out to you, if you haven't ever stopped to think about this. And again, I know that many of you have like gone deeply into all these different things. And so I'm assuming some of you have noticed this before. But interesting, isn't it, that white as snow is a bad thing here? Because they are dark skinned of some form, right? Dark olive skin, dark light brown, tan, like constant tan year round, dark brown. I'm not quite sure which Moses was, right? Coming from Egypt, it could have been a couple different shades of not white. Right? But there are people who claim that white as snow is purity in a biblical sense, but it is not in the Hebrew Bible, because in the Hebrew Bible, we're talking about tanned skinned folks. And so white as snow is actually a disease. Right? That is a European thing to say that white is pure and lovely, but it is not an African or ancient Near Eastern, Middle Eastern. That is not true for them. And that is the people, and those are the people who are populating these stories. Those are the people who are the ancestors. Those are the people in this tradition. Olive, dark light, tan, dark brown, all the different M&M colors of brown, right? Whichever. That's what we're talking about. And I love that, because I love it when people can show me things that I am a white-skinned person, and I come from a white tradition that thinks of white as snow as good and pure, right? That's not its context or meaning here. Isn't that interesting? White as snow is terrifying if you have a lot of melanin in your skin, huh? Okay, so let's keep going. So God says, "I will do these things for you to prove," cat hair, it's itchy, to prove that I'm with you. So, isn't that fun? I like that I actually, every now and then, I can bring something new to some of you, even like those of you who've been doing this for a while, right? I can give you something new, then that makes me feel good. All right, we're going to keep reading though. Here we go. But Moses said to the Lord, "Oh, my Lord, I have never been eloquent, neither in the past nor even now that you have spoken to your slave," my English says servant, "but I am slow of speech and slow of tongue." The Lord said to him, "Who gives speech to mortals? Who makes them mute or deaf, seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, and I will be with your mouth and teach you what you are to speak. I love that. You're going to be channeling my voice. But he said, oh, my Lord, please send someone else. Then the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses. And I mean, wow. Do you get angry this quickly with your children if you have them? Or with the people who work with you? Like, that's just quick and petty, don't you think? Yeah, we've got some action down here on the. Yeah. Yeah, just very human. A little bit too anger issue related human here. He said, please send someone else. And the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses. He said, what of your brother Aaron, the Levite? I know that. Wait, the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses. And he said, okay, so which one said, Moses or the Lord? I don't like the way this reads because it's confusing to me. So anyway, let me just make sure I'm reading it appropriately. What of your brother Aaron, the Levite? I know that he can speak fluently. Even now he is coming out to meet you. And when he sees you, his heart will be glad. You shall speak to him and put the words in his mouth. And I will be with your mouth and with his mouth and will teach you what you shall do. He indeed shall speak for you to the people. He shall serve as a mouth for you, and you shall serve as God for him. Take in your hand the staff with which you shall perform the signs. It's been a really long time since I've read this, and it kind of trips me out a little bit. The language here, I don't know about you all. And anyway, God got angry, and then he's like, okay, fine. What about Aaron? Is Aaron going to be good enough for you? Sorry, let's get this taken care of here. I wish you could see my cat. She's having a hard time here. So God decides to humor Moses, but this language, you shall speak to him and put the words in his mouth, and I will be with your mouth and with his mouth, and then he'll be mouth for you, and you shall serve as God for him. That's a little bit really, God? That's actually a little bit weird and scary. What do you think? What do you think, Minerva? Okay. All right. So all this is happening. But I promise there's a reason we're still reading this. This doesn't relate to our themes, but I promise we're coming back to it. Moses went back to his father-in-law, Jethro, and said to him, please let me go back to my kindred in Egypt and see whether they are still living. Now, that's a really somber thing to say, right? Because they were really plentiful. They were multiple. They were large people. So for him to think that they may have all been killed off by now, very intense. But also, I'm just asking you to think about this from his wife's perspective. Your husband has been out talking to himself outside, right? There's a voice, like he's having a conversation with the Lord, and he comes back in and he asks your father, not you, but your father, if he can leave and go do something, not you. Again, I get this is typical of the time. It's also fairly typical today, or more common today than most people realize, which is why I'm just bringing it up. So Moses went back to his father-in-law. Please let me go back to my kindred in Egypt and see whether they are still living. Again, this is a nod to what we actually do see in Genesis 2, which is Israelite men leaving their families and joining with the families of their women instead of the women leaving their families and coming to theirs, which is interesting. But that's what we're seeing here. So, but also it doesn't really matter. So let's just keep moving. But which is an interesting thing, right? That we talk about it in lots of different ways, I suppose. But there are a couple stories of people groups who are maternal, who are, the women focused in terms of which family you connect with, or you extended family you live with. Yes, right, little one. So Jethro, his father-in-law, said to Moses, go in peace. The Lord said to Moses in Midian, go back to Egypt, for all those who were seeking your life are dead. So Moses took his woman, my English says wife, and his sons and put them on a donkey and went back to the land of Egypt. And Moses carried the staff of God in his hand. Right. I don't want you to be comfortable and just like, why is she I want you to be upset that this is happening again, that this was not a conversation that he had with Zipporah. This was a conversation Moses had with God, and then he asks his father-in-law if he can go. He does not consult with his partner, his spouse, his woman. And his woman and child are treated like property, right? Okay. And the Lord said to Moses, when you go back to Egypt, see that you perform before Pharaoh all the wonders that I have put in your power. But I will harden his heart so that he will not let the people go. This is why I was like, the book of Exodus belongs under that other theme of talking about who God is in the Bible, how God is depicted, how manipulative God is, how whatever, right? Tick off all the things. But worth noting, I will harden his heart so that he will not let the people go. Then you shall say to Pharaoh, thus says the Lord God, Israel is my firstborn son, which is also not true. It's the Ishmaelites. Israel is my firstborn son. I said to you, let my son go that he may worship me, but you refuse to let him go. Now I will kill your firstborn son. So all kinds of layers to this story, right? In terms of the impending plagues, right? Yeah, what do you make of that, right? God saying to Moses that Israel's his firstborn son, when it's really the Ishmaelites. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. On the way, at a place where they spent the night, the Lord met him and tried to kill him. What the actual fuck is going on right now? This is why we're reading chapter 4. We've just had this whole thing. You're going to go lead them out of Egypt into this land that is already occupied by the people, and I'm going to drive them out before you. And I'm giving you all these special miracles that you can perform to prove to everybody that that I am with you, and take this magic staff and do all these things. And fine, I will let your brother be your voice piece, your mouthpiece, right? Like, fine. You get everything you want. And then all of a sudden, the Lord met him and tried to kill him. Come on, people. To be honest, I do not have easy access to scholarship right now, so I wasn't able to go look into this, last night or this morning as I was preparing for this. So I'm sure that some people have written some things to help explain what's going on here in this context, but I don't know what that is. I don't know what kinds of ancient contextual things we might discover. Is this an element of a test, making sure he's up for the test that's ahead of him, and God is testing him, trying to kill him? Or is this really just like somebody was tripping on something when they wrote this and inserted it into the story? Like, I honestly don't know what to do with this. And I just think and then the way it's all resolved is weird to me as well. And I'm sure there's scholarship on this, and this just isn't my main field. But so on the way, at a place where they spent the night, the Lord met him and tried to kill him. But Zipporah, dun, 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 the woman swoops in. Again, his life is saved by a woman. Isn't that interesting? Moshe. Zipporah took a flint and cut off her son's foreskin and touched Moses's feet with it. So many questions. And said, truly you are a bridegroom of blood to me. So he let him alone, assuming that's God let Moses alone. It was then, she said, a bridegroom of blood by circumcision. This is one of the most bizarre little eruptions in the narrative I think of the whole Hebrew Bible. Like, what is going on here? I don't know. And 24 to 26. Let's see if there's anything interesting here in the Moses again is saved by a woman. Yes, I'm looking at the footnotes here of this version of the Bible. Saved by a woman, his woman, the English his wife, Zipporah. In performing her son's circumcision, she may be carrying out a female role in Midianite and Israelite culture. That's interesting. Feet and euphemism for genitals. Right. That's what I was going to comment on, but I just wasn't sure how much to get into that. But Zipporah took a flint, cut off her son's foreskin, and touched Moses's penis with it. Like, what's going on here, really? This is a little much. It's a little much. Why are men why is it all so much about your penis? Like, we get that they're important, that we wouldn't be here without them, but like, why do you have to make everything about your penises? Why is it? They're funny looking. They're really funny looking, and they're just very vulnerable things. And I wish you guys could get over yourselves with them, but apparently you just can't. I don't know. And it's trippy. Bridegroom of blood. I want nothing to do with that visual and that metaphor or that symbolism, and that I don't understand. The Lord said to Aaron. So we just skipped right over that, right? I mean, it's like, this is happening. This is what you say when you get there. And then we have this random segue where God tries to kill him and a woman steps in, saves him. And then like, we just pretend that didn't happen. And then the Lord said to Aaron, meanwhile, while Moses and his woman Zipporah are having a really odd little ritual over here dealing with men's penises, God is over here talking to Aaron. Go into the wilderness to meet Moses. So he went. And he met him at the mountain of God and kissed him. Moses told Aaron all the words of the Lord with which he had sent him, and all the signs with which he had charged him. Then Moses and Aaron went and assembled all the elders of the Israelites. Aaron spoke all the words that the Lord had spoken to Moses and performed the signs in the sight of the people. The people believed. And when they heard that the Lord had given heed to the Israelites and that he had seen their misery, they bowed down and worshipped. The implication is they worshiped the Lord, though it's not entirely clear, to be honest. Anyway, random things. Women are still being carted around like property because that's what happens to women. And yet she swoops in to save his life. And thank you for that, Zipporah. We wouldn't have this story without you. And what else can we say? And men's penises, right? It's like it's a day in the life. It's a day in a chapter in the Bible. Women as property and men's penises are important. What else can I say? That's all I needed to say today, I think. Almost the shortest story time yet, but I think I've said what needs to be said here. Let me see if there's anything. We've got some German going on over here in the chatter, and that kind of makes me happy. Okay, exactly. I'm backing way up here to considering a news comment. A son just doesn't exist because his mother was a enslaved person and rejected, and yeah, and also Ishmael, the first son. So the Ishmaelites should be God's first son, not Israel. If we're going to do that metaphor, because it's also weird, by the way, Israel is being called God's son right now, but Israel is also God's wife later on. Let's just be clear about that. The biblical writers are very confused relationally. I remember having a student in my intro course saying, I think God needs to define the relationship. Like, it's very confusing. One day we are God's child, the next we're God's wife. I'm getting yelled at and battered verbally, and actually in some ways I'm being threatened with rape and death, murder. And then as a spouse, and then tomorrow I'm the child again, or I'm the whatever, the people. So the metaphors for the people's relationship to God, the metaphors vary, and it is very confusing. You can't have them all at the same time, because you can't be a son and married to him. It's just, that's That's a little creepy. Oh, I think I need to link a reel that I saw the other day. Maybe I'll share it in the description. It's not related to Hebrew Bible. It's related to one of the previous conversations, but I just thought of it talking about, God getting a teenage woman pregnant. Yikes, God. It's a bit young. And then he says, I don't know, for those of you who don't know him, but God, could have chosen any woman he wanted, and he went for a teenager. He's like, I know some of you really like his work, but I think we need to cancel God. Yeah, I like that. That reminded me of this. This reminded me of that for some reason. Anyway, I think we're good here. I think we're good. Oh, okay. Constellation Pegasus. I'm not sure what you were referring to back there. I'm sorry. No, it's not just that Israel. I feel like there's a disconnect here, Constellation Pegasus. What we see here in Exodus, right? Israel is being claimed to be God's son, but in the prophets, Israel is God's wife. Over and over, and very painfully and very abusively. God is an abusive husband. I had a student just this week in my online class say, I mean, jokingly, it's almost as if this is a toxic relationship. And I was like, why are you saying joking? Like, it's not funny. Like, it's not a joke. And I know he meant that. He was seeing it for the first time. And so he was uncomfortable acknowledging that what he could see happening, being described in Genesis about God is a toxic relationship. There are a lot of things going on in the Bible between the descriptions between God and the people that are quite abusive and toxic and unhealthy. So I was trying to highlight that within the scriptures themselves, the people of God are described metaphorically in multiple different ways in terms of relating to God, or in the Newer Testament in relating to Jesus. I mean, the church is called the body of Christ. The church is also called the bride of Christ. Well, pick a lane, people. You don't get to be both. I'm sorry, because those are two very different things. Except for when marriage is actually very subordinate, a very hierarchical relationship. And then it's kind of the same thing, but it's very different in our contexts, right? To say that one is the head and the rest is just the functioning body that needs the head to function and all subordinate to the head, Whereas in a partnership or a marriage, today at least, it's a little different. But also imagining yourself as the body to the head is different than imagining yourself as a spouse or a partner. So anyway, okay. Thanks for showing up today. Thanks for showing up. Yeah, I love that there were some folks here. Appreciate that. And if you're watching it later, thank you for checking it out. And we will pick up with, I'm trying to remember if there are other stories in Exodus, and I don't think there are, but if there's something else that happens later in Exodus, no, my mind just went to Judges because that's a fun story. But anyway, we'll get there. Tuesday. If there's Tuesday the 18th, I guess, if there's something else in Exodus, we'll be reading that on Tuesday. Thanks for showing up, and I appreciate you. Okay, see you next time.